Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph podcast. I am your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 9, a recap of the 2020 AKA Warrior Cup. But today, before we talk about sport karate, we must talk about something that transcends the sport, and that is the loss of two greats that we recently suffered. The first was the passing of legendary point fighter Steve Nasty Anderson, and the second is the tragic death of 41-year-old basketball legend Kobe Bryant. And Kobe's passing is something that makes everybody wake up and come to grips with their own mortality. Kobe's sudden passing, the nature in which it happened, the fact that it was a helicopter crash, which sounds exotic, but that helicopter ride was very routine for Kobe. His daughter, who perished with him, Gianna, who was 13 years old, had been on the helicopter many times. Kobe would regularly take the helicopter to Laker games, even when he was playing. So it was nothing out of the ordinary for Kobe to be taking a ride in this helicopter. And one day, the fog was just too bad. The helicopter got too low, and a tragic, truly sad accident occurred. And it's moments like these where we forget about, whose team we cheered for, which players we liked, or who we think is the greatest and all that. And we just appreciate our lives, and we appreciate the lives that those individuals gave us. The memories within the sport karate community that people like Steve Nasty Anderson gave, that people like Kevin Thompson gave. And then the memories that a transcendent player like Kobe Bryant, who literally impacted billions of people with the level that he excelled to in his sport. And for him to be gone in an instant is soul-shaking, to say the least. And I just hope that anybody listening, first and foremost, says a prayer for the Bryant family as well as the family of Steve Nasty Anderson. But related to the Kobe situation, just take a moment and tell those who you love that you love them, and appreciate every moment that you have in this life. Because as we have learned, that can be gone at any instant. And so I just want to take a moment of silence and observe and respect the lives of those two sporting greats, Steve Nasty Anderson and Kobe Bryant. Thank you. I want to continue by speaking a little bit about Kobe. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm a Celtics fan. I became a Celtics fan in 2008 when the Celtics defeated the Kobe Bryant Lakers. But that series, and then the two finals after in 2009 when the Lakers beat the Magic, and then when they went back-to-back in 2010 and they beat my Celtics. Throughout those three finals, I just watched Kobe dominate games, the ability to take over games, and the tenacity and the competitiveness with which he did it made me fall in love with Kobe Bryant, despite the fact that he played for the rival team. And I've always said that there were two ways in which I aspired to be like Kobe, to have Kobe's Mamba mentality. And the first way was in that competitiveness. Every time that I step in the ring, I try to channel what Kobe was when he was a competitor on the basketball court, and how he would literally stop at nothing to make sure that his team was going to come out successful in that game, that he was going to do everything that he could to win that game. And that's the type of mentality that I try to bring into the ring, that when I step on the mat, I'm going to do everything within my power to be able to get a win for myself and for my team that day. And the second was Kobe's willingness to help the next generation. If you watched any of the NBA games that happened on Sunday, the same day that Kobe passed, you saw players in tears across the league, not just because of this tragic accident, but because of the fact that many of those players had been personally impacted by Kobe. Being a Celtics fan, I know that Jason Tatum is somebody that was mentored by Kobe, that modeled his game after Kobe. Kyrie Irving had to sit out a game and mourn the loss of his mentor. Just the dedication that Kobe had to sharing his knowledge and to helping the next generation of NBA players is something that I aspire to do in sport karate. It's admirable the amount of dedication that Kobe had to helping others. And I just hope that that I can just display the smallest bit of that and being able to help inspire the next generation of martial artists and hopefully have a similar impact in my sport that Kobe was able to have in his. And I think that that's, the goal that anybody wants in sports is to be able to become an icon like Kobe truly was, and to be able to impact people in a way that goes beyond sports. It's more important than sports. It has more gravity than sports. And that's what Kobe Bryant did. And he applied that in all aspects of his life, even after winning 5 NBA championships, putting up an 81-point performance, which is the second most all-time, only to Wilt Chamberlain, who scored 100 in a totally different era. The fact that Kobe scored 81 points is ridiculous. Just the things that Kobe did, sinking 2 free throws on a torn Achilles to help his team in an attempt to make the playoffs that year when that team had no business making the playoffs, but they had Kobe Bryant, so they had a chance. That is the greatness of Kobe Bryant. That is the legacy of Kobe Bryant. And beyond what he did in athletics, which is what I was getting to, he wrote Dear Basketball, which won an Oscar for being the best short film that year. Kobe applied that mentality of trying to be the best and trying to win and trying to be successful in every single thing that he did. And that's extremely admirable, and something that everybody should aspire to have is the Mamba mentality that Kobe had. And of course, not to mention in this tragic situation, the loss of, I believe it was 7 other passengers outside of Kobe and his daughter, who absolutely should be prayed for, and people should have thoughts for them as well. And so now we are going to attempt to lighten the mood back up a little bit and go ahead and start talking about the AKA Warrior Cup, which I will say was an awesome experience. Hunter, Lion, and Sensei Sharky put on an incredible event. They've been putting on an incredible event for many, many years now. This year was no exception. I thought that the new venue at the Sheraton Grand was great. It was nearby the area that the Hyatt Regency was in, so as far as food options and everything, nothing really changed. I still had my same superstitious meals before the Friday eliminations and before the Saturday night show and all that. So everything worked out great. And Sensei and Hunter really outdid themselves putting on a great event, as well as all of their promoting staff that helps them out. And so I want to start by going ahead and going straight into who won the Warrior Cups. We're going to start with junior forms. Caio da Silva went back-to-back, winning his second Warrior Cup title. And Caio's a stud. Caio runs an incredible traditional form. He's trained by Joey Castro, and he's just such a strong kid. He just goes out there, he performs it, he puts on an aura, he becomes a character when he competes, and he just has a really clean, really strong, really sharp traditional form that he runs. I believe it's a certain style's version of Super Enpei. Joey could probably tell you better than I could, but he just performs it so well, and it just fits him so well, and he's won the past 2 junior forms Warrior Cups with that traditional form. So congratulations to Caio da Silva. Junior weapons was Mason Bamba finally getting his Warrior Cup, and I say finally because Mason is somebody that I trained when he was younger. He was somebody that came to me, and I could tell that he was talented, but he was certainly not polished when he first came to me. And so I kind of showed him the ropes and helped him learn to be a competitor, to be clean, and to be able to go out there and put on a show for people. And he's really just taken off with that. He's created a style of his own. He incorporates a lot of tricking into his bow staff routines, doing tricking and bow staff tricks at the same time. One of the moves that I saw him debut this weekend was he actually did a move where he did a beach whist, which for those of you that don't know, a beach whist is basically just a horizontal twist done in the air. But what Mason did was he actually threw his bow, completed the beach whist, and then caught his bow after the beach whist was finished, which is something that I haven't seen done in competition before. So that was awesome to see. And I say finally because it's been a long time coming for him. I think it was the past 3 years when he was in 13 and under, he made it into the Warrior Cup final, but wasn't able to break through and beat that 14 to 17 competitor. But this year, this was his first year in the 14 and 17 age group, being the big boy in the division, so to speak, and he was able to secure his first Warrior Cup title. So congratulations to Mason Bamba, Chicago native, getting that Warrior Cup. Now moving on to the fighting. In my opinion, we saw dominant performances by both Avery and Morgan Plowden. The siblings cleaned up those 2 Warrior Cups, and the Plowden family now has 10 Warrior Cup titles to their name. The dad, Richard Plowden, has 2. Avery has 3, so he surpassed his father with this Warrior Cup. And Morgan has the most in the family with 5 Warrior Cup titles. That's absolutely incredible. The things that the Plowdens have been able to achieve in sport karate are absolutely insane. Much respect to them. Avery's somebody that I've had a little bit of a relationship with now for several years, with him telling me good luck before I go up on stage and me telling him good luck before he goes and fights. And I always joke with Avery that as long as he's not fighting a Paul Mitchell guy, then I'm pulling for him. So congratulations to both Avery and Morgan Plowden. You guys went up there, and truly, I only got to see the fights in the finals because I was competing throughout the day, obviously, and coaching my students. But in those finals fights, Avery and Morgan pretty much dominated. Jack Felton was also in the Final Four, which I was really excited to see. But Jack Felton lost in the semifinal, not to Avery, actually lost to Oscar Guzman, which was quite surprising. But much respect to him for being able to make it to that final. But then Avery just took over in that final and secured his 3rd Warrior Cup. And once again, Morgan took her 5th Warrior Cup. So congratulations to the Plowden family. Now moving on to adult forms. Adult forms was a showdown. And it's interesting when you watch Warrior Cup finals, especially in the adult division, because they can often get very big. I've seen 6, 7, 8 different competitors be in an adult Warrior Cup final because it's men, women, seniors, it's everybody that gets to go in there and go for that Warrior Cup. And so you see some Warrior Cup finals where it's just super deep. Everybody has a chance to win. Scores are all over the place. But in this one, and watching the division, it was very clear to me that Danny Etkin and Aiden Considine were gunning for that cup. I believe that they were the last 2 to go in the division, which obviously helps. It puts a little bit more emphasis on them being the penultimate competitors. But no, those 2 guys wanted it, and they both wanted it bad. I remember talking to Aiden while he was warming up, and he was in the zone. Aiden was actually dealing with a bit of a mild injury that he had suffered earlier in the day that he had to overcome, and so I was able to give him a little bit of a pep talk and motivate him a little bit. And Aiden went out there and threw down, man. Danny's been in the adult division for 2 years now, suffered an injury last year, which kept him sidelined for a lot of the time. But fortunately, he was able to come back this year. Aiden, this is his first year in the adult division, and he made a statement with that performance in the Warrior Cup. I thought Aiden looked fantastic, but Danny looked fantastic as well. So Danny went out there. Danny hit a clean form, and Danny was able to secure his Warrior Cup title. I believe that is 4 Warrior Cup titles for Danny Etkin, 4 Forms Warrior Cup titles. So congratulations to Danny Etkin for securing that Forms Warrior Cup. And speaking of Danny Etkin, it's time for a Century Signature Weapons ad. Danny Etkin with the nunchucks, myself, Jackson Rudolph with the bow staff, and Mackenzie Emery with the commas. We all have Signature Series weapons through Century Martial Arts. They are manufactured by G-Force, who is the best of the best in the industry. They're made to be our competition specs, so when you order it, you're competing with exactly what we trust when we go up there on stage to perform for Team Paul Mitchell and win world championships. So we all highly recommend Century Signature Weapons. Head on over to centurymartialarts.com and type in Danny Etkin, Jackson Rudolph, or Mackenzie Emery in the search bar to check out the Century Signature Series today. And so now we're going to jump on into adult weapons, which clearly is my favorite to talk about. And I was very fortunate and very blessed to have secured my 7th Warrior Cup title. And man, I hesitate because it's just surreal to say that. I remember I mentioned this in my social media posts yesterday reflecting on the event. I still remember going to my very first NASCAR tournament was the Bluegrass Nationals promoted by the legendary Ken Eubanks. And after Master Eubanks passed away, Sensei Sharkey actually took over the Bluegrass Nationals and merged what was then called the AKA Grand Nationals before it was rebranded as the AKA Warrior Cup. But the Warrior Cup award was still around. It was just the tournament title was different. So he actually took the AKA Grand Nationals and moved it to Louisville, Kentucky, and merged it with the Bluegrass Nationals. And that was the first time that I ever competed at the AKA Grand Nationals, was when it was being held in Louisville for those 2 years. And I still remember, going and seeing the Warrior Cups for the first time, and how it would have been a dream come true to just be able to secure one of those titles. And really, that's all I ever wanted. Like, my big goal was like, man, if I could just get one Warrior Cup, just get one U.S. Open, just get one diamond ring, my life will be complete. That would just be the coolest thing ever. And reflecting and looking back and seeing that I was able to win 7 of these Warrior Cups. Now I have 3 in the juniors and 4 in the adult division, so I've been able to outdo my junior career in terms of my Warrior Cup totals. I mean, it's just surreal. I'm honored, I'm humbled, I'm blessed, and I just can't express enough gratitude for the blessings that I've been given. Gratitude to my parents who have supported me this entire time. Gratitude towards my competitors who have motivated me and supported me. Gratitude towards my amazing fiancée, Gabrielle, who supports me when it gets hard with school and training and juggling life, and now trying to think about wedding plans and looking forward to medical school and trying to juggle just everything. And she's my rock, and she motivates me and she inspires me. She was able to make it on stage at Warrior Cup as well, and I'm so proud of her for that. But just, man, it's always after these majors that I get emotional, and I reflect and I just appreciate. And that's one thing that if you listen to the previous episode of the podcast where I talk about how, when you're going to a major tournament like the AK Warrior Cup, don't just treat it like any other tournament. You should go in there understanding the history, understanding the prestige, understanding the opportunity that you have to be a part of something truly special. And that's something that I tried to channel when I walked on stage on Saturday night, was just really appreciating that moment, taking it all in. Because, to be honest, I don't know how many more times I'll be on that Warrior Cup stage, if I'll ever be on the Warrior Cup stage again. The future is... we'll have to see what the future holds for me, and a lot's going to depend on this year and how I feel and what Team Paul Mitchell expects of me. And I'm willing to do anything for this sport. I'm willing to do anything for my team. But I know that going to medical school eventually, this isn't something that I can do forever. And I'm humbled and blessed that I have these opportunities that I have right now to truly appreciate what I do, and to truly love going out there and performing and being able to inspire others. And I'll stop dwelling on my own Warrior Cup, but I just can't disregard this opportunity and this platform that I have now through this podcast to be able to show my appreciation for everybody, for fans, supporters, family, friends, coaches, teammates. Just thank you all so much. But now that's enough about that. I was also very pleased to have won the SportMartialArts.com Viewers' Choice Award for Best Weapons Competitor, as well as the Best Overall Male Competitor. 2 accolades that, although I wanted to win, and obviously I think that I am the best weapons competitor, and I like to think that I'm the best male competitor because that's the confidence that I have when I go out into the ring. I did not think that I would win. Because, it's, popularity contests have just never been my thing. But I'm truly appreciative for everybody that voted and held me in that high of a regard and selected me to win those awards. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for everybody that voted for that as well. And now we're going to move on and talk about other people, because I don't like talking about myself that much. So now we're going to move on to, I want to give a shout out to a couple of competitors in that adult weapons division. And a lot of people don't realize this, but the way that, or at least in the past several years in the modern era, we'll call it, the way that the Warrior Cup final pool is decided, so the competitors that get in, is any men's CMX weapons competitor, because it was originally, the men's weapons overall grand, and then things became more inclusive. So it's the men's CMX weapons winners. So the winner of the creative bladed and non-bladed, the winner of the extreme weapons, the musical weapons division, and in this case, the winner of the Chinese weapons division, Zarzu Karate, also was doing a CMX style Kung Fu form, and so he got in as well. And then in addition to those men's CMX winners, they take the men's traditional overall grands winner, which I was fortunate enough to be able to win the overall for traditional weapons in the daytime, be able to secure that spot as well. They also take the women's overall weapons grand winner, which is decided earlier in the show. And in this case, it was Julia Plocker. I want to start by giving respect to Julia Plocker because she absolutely threw down. In the women's division, with Mackenzie and Sammy being so dominant for so many years, and Kenzie and Sammy always pushed each other, there were times when it seemed like the difficulty level of some of the female competitors, I don't want to say just wasn't up to par with some of the male competitors, but in the male division, there was a lot more push to try to see who could do the hardest stuff. Because, in just the past few years, you've had myself, Reed Presley, Cole Presley, Tyler Weaver, the list goes on and on and on of how deep the men's division has been. And so we've all pushed each other to do harder and harder tricks. Whereas in the women's division, the rivalry between Kenzie and Sammy has kind of defined who's been doing the tricks in that division. But there's some new blood in that division. Julia Plocker, Mary Amato, and that group have just moved up here within the past 2 or 3 years. And Julia Plocker threw down a very difficult kama form. Lots of releases, lots of creative tricks. She upgraded her signature move where she places the kama on one foot and kind of balances it there as she raises up a side kick. And then she normally just pops it up and catches it. This time she popped it up in the air, did a full 360 spin, and then caught the kama, which was very impressive. Ended the form with a double kama throw. So much respect to Julia Plocker for being able to go out there and lay out some difficult tricks. That was really impressive. And then the other spot that gets made into the Adult Warrior Cup, Weapons Warrior Cup final is the 30-plus, the senior Weapons Grands winner, which in this case was Edgar Cordova of Guatemala. I know he has a very decorated resume on NBL and some other international leagues. He came out there and did a flying kama form, and he looked great. So much respect to Edgar Cordova for going out there, winning the 30-plus senior overall, and then competing for a Warrior Cup as well. And that's one thing that I always say, man, is I always pay a lot of respect to my competitors, because my competitors are who push me. They're who makes me want to be better and makes me want to take my tricks and makes me want to take my game to the next level. Without competitors to compete against, there would never be any reason to get better, right? So I think that you should always give the utmost respect to your competitors. So I just wanted to recognize a few people there who had some good performances in that Warrior Cup round. Now we're going to move on, and we're going to stop talking about Warrior Cups, and we're going to move on to something incredible that I witnessed this weekend. The 14-17 boys weapons runoff, featuring Mason Bumba of Top 10 USA, Alex Mancias, the newest member of Team Paul Mitchell, Dawson Holt, and Benjamin Jones, both members of Team Competitive Edge. My team, thank you very much. My team, along with Reed and Cole Presley and Mackenzie Emery. But I'm very proud of my Team Competitive Edge, so you hear me brag about them a lot. But anyway, so the field was Mason Bubba, Alex Mancias, Dawson Holt, and Ben Jones. So Mason doing a bow form, Ben doing a bow form as well, Alex Mancias with his commas, Dawson Holt with his sword form. I bring up this runoff because it was the single greatest runoff that I have ever seen in all my years of competing and watching sport karate. Every single boy hit their form. Every single competitor threw extremely difficult tricks. Every single competitor was intense, and you could tell how bad every single one of them wanted to win. The person that got fourth place easily could have won the division, just like whoever got third, whoever got second. Everybody in that division had a chance to win that division, and they all threw down ridiculously difficult forms. Mason Bumba did the throw beach whisk catch that I mentioned. He also did a 3.5 spin in his form. Alex Mancias had very high level tricking, jumping up super high in the air with his acrobatics, as well as having some very difficult comma releases. Dawson Holt is probably the best sword competitor on the circuit right now. Yeah, as far as CMX standards go, I'm trying to think of other people. As far as CMX sword goes, Dawson Holt is probably the best sword competitor on the circuit right now. And he did some extremely creative sword techniques, as well as just being clean and precise with all of his cuts. And Ben Jones, who's a student of mine, Ben, I work with him most of the time, every other week, if not every week. And Ben went out there and threw down an incredible form as well. We've been working on his new form for several months now, and he did some incredibly difficult tricks. He had a triple spin in his form as well, had his own variation of a finger spin called the Ben spin that he nailed, among other tricks in that form that he executed beautifully. And I couldn't be more proud of all four of these guys. You know, Mason, I mentioned, is a former student of mine. Alex Mancias, now my teammate. Dawson Holt, one of my team members. Ben Jones, a current student of mine. I'm just so proud of all four of these boys. I can't speak enough about how impressed I was with the competitiveness, but also the sportsmanship. All four of these guys were cheering each other on. They wanted to see the other guys hit their forms so that they could see who was really the best that day. And I commend them for that. The center judge in that division was actually Master Dennis Brown, who I spoke to after the division. I was walking by, and I said something to the effect of, "Man, that must have been tough to judge," or something like that, because I would not have wanted to be sitting in that chair having to judge that division. And Master Brown looked at me and he goes, "I've been doing martial arts for over 50 years. I've been around NASCA tournaments for 38 years now." And he said that he's never seen a runoff that good. So it's not just coming from me. It's not just coming around from somebody that's been doing martial arts for 15 years. You've got somebody that's been in the martial arts for over 50 years saying that was the best runoff division he's ever seen. And I couldn't agree more. Congratulations to Mason Bumba, Alex Mancias, Dawson Holt, Ben Jones. You guys killed it. And that also brings me to another little thing that I wanted to add here, which is a competitor to look out for in 2020 is Dawson Holt. Dawson Holt was on stage for both forms and weapons at the AKA Warrior Cup. Now, he's been on stage before. I know he was on stage at the Battle of Atlanta last year, representing Pro-Mac, and they did something at Battle of Atlanta last year where the Pro-Mac champions competed against the people that won the NASCA tournament that day for a special title. So Dawson was on stage for that. I think he's been on stage a couple of more times. Obviously, he's a seasoned veteran being on stage with the Competitive Edge demo team. But Dawson Holt made stage twice this weekend. Again, I say for forms and weapons. He was on stage for traditional weapons and for CMX forms. And in his CMX form, both in runoffs and on stage, he has some of the cleanest hands that I have ever seen from a junior. Like when Dawson Holt does a hand combo, everything is fully extended. Every chop is completely straight. He doesn't overextend or underextend a punch. Everything is perfectly placed. He's shifting his stances. He's using his hips. He's locking out his back leg. His basic martial arts technique, towards the end of his form, he doesn't even combo it. He just does a spinning hook kick, and it's an absolute thing of beauty. So Dawson Holt, for his creativity with his sword, as well as his cleanliness and his execution with his open hand form, Dawson Holt is definitely going to be somebody to look out for this year. And I know that I'm biased because I'm a Competitive Edge coach, but look out for Dawson Holt. He's going to have a great year, as well as, all of the kids on Competitive Edge. I mentioned Ben Jones and how impressed I was with him. Alex Miller had a great weekend. I don't want to start saying names because I'm bound to forget somebody because we got so many, great team members that go out there and put on a show. Connor Roberts, one of our new members, came out there, won a division, made it on into runoffs, and put on a show in runoffs for CMX forms. I'm just so proud of everybody on that team. Avery Presley made it into runoffs again, like always. again, I'm trying to say names as they come to me. But everybody on Competitive Edge, if I didn't say your name specifically, know that I'm proud of you too. I know Brady Clifford was in runoffs as well. His younger brother, Ryan Clifford, won a mini Warrior Cup in the underbelt division. So anyway, I'm just so proud of that team and how hard they work and the passion that they show for the sport. Now, I do want to move on to one more topic about the AKA Warrior Cup before we actually conclude with a new segment here on the Jax Rudolph podcast. But this last topic about the AKA Warrior Cup, because Sensei Sharky and Hunter Lion put on such a great event, and because it's the first tournament of the season, and because it has the NASCA banquet, there's a lot of people at the AKA Warrior Cup. There were multiple age groups, both male and female, that there were over 18 competitors. Now, why do I say over 18 competitors? Well, according to the NASCA rules for 2020, kind of a flashback to our Obscure Sport Karate Rules podcast, which I believe was either episode 2 or 3. But anyway, so a new rule this year is that if a division has over 18 competitors, you have to split the division. And so this rule was used a lot over the course of the weekend. So there was a lot of conversation about it. And a lot of the conversation was about this rule not being super fair. However, I'm actually going to defend this rule because I understand why the rule is the way that it is. So the way that the rule works is that if there's over 18 people in a division, they split the division so that the judges can give a more accurate comparison of the competitors. Because the logic here is that if there's over 18 competitors, it's just extremely hard to keep up with everybody and give an accurate comparative score to everybody in the division. So I get that. So then the way that the rule works is you take the top 10 seeds, which remember, at the Warrior Cup, it's the first NASCA tournament of the season. So this is really whoever finished in the top 10 in that age division the previous year. Those top 10 spots, those top 10 individuals get taken out of the division and they get to sit and wait. What are they sitting and waiting for? Well, anybody that is competing in this division that was not in the top 10 seeds competes. So let's say I was in a division with 24 people, right? Which I think was a realistic scenario. I think men's musical weapons was 24 people. So in that 24-person division, what they do is they take the 10 seeds and pull them out, and they run a 14-person division. So it's the 14 people that did not have the seed. Those people run a division, and you get 4 people. So first, second, third, and fourth in that non-seeded division. And then those 4 people compete against the top 10 seeds in yet another 14-person division. So in total, you wind up running 2 14-person divisions. 4 of the competitors wind up having to run their form twice. And what doesn't seem fair about this is like, well, you're taking the top 10 seeds and they get to sit and wait while the other 14 people are running their forms. But there's a reason for this. Because if you were to do it the quote-unquote more fair way, then what would be happening is you'd be splitting that division down the middle. So you would have a division of 12 people on one hand, you'd have a division of 12 people on the other hand, and you would have to run both of those down to 4 places. Because if you were to just pick the winners and then have the winners go against each other, well, then you have 2 second places, 2 third places, 2 fourth places, and that messes up seeding for good, for the whole year potentially, right? And so what you have to do is you have to take the top 4 from both of those divisions, and they compete against each other in a division of 8 people. So at that point, you have one division of 12, you have another division of 12, that gives you 24 forms, and then you add on the other 8, and now you have 32 forms that have to be watched. Whereas when you do it under the current rules, where you take the 10 seeds and take them out, run the 14-person division, get 4 competitors, and then add those into the seeds to run another 14-person division, you're only running 28 forms. So you're saving more time, not to mention the fact that it's less forms, but you're also having to do the scores for one less division, which often takes a long time, especially if there's tiebreakers to do and things like that. So you save, I'm going to estimate anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes by doing it this way where you take out the seeds compared to doing it the other way, the way that people were mentioning, the way that was kind of being talked about of splitting the division down the middle. And if you think about it, if you were to repeat that process multiple times as the division progresses through multiple divisions, I mean, you're potentially saving three and a half hours that would have been spent running additional divisions, just trying to make things as fair as possible. So from an efficiency standpoint, I understand this rule and I support this rule because I think that efficiency is one thing that sport karate is always trying to improve. And I think that ultimately, if you're taking out all of the top 10 seeds, you're probably going to wind up finding the right individuals that truly deserve to be in that top 1 through 8th place spot, especially if somebody goes through that first non-seeded division and earns their way there by getting in the top 4. You're virtually guaranteeing that you're going to get fair judging in that sense. Even if it's not fair that those 4 individuals that move on have to run 2 forms, the judging is at least going to be a little bit more fair than it would be if you ran a full-on 24-person division altogether. So that's my opinion on that rule. That was a topic of discussion for a lot of people over the weekend, and I think it actually worked out pretty well. And before we move on into our new segment that I'm going to be introducing, a quick ad for the Flow System. So the Flow System is a one-of-a-kind weapons program powered by the Martial Arts Industry Association and founded by yours truly, Jackson Rudolph, featuring a full-on comma curriculum from Mackenzie Emery, as well as my very own bow staff curriculum. And I say it's an innovative program, and I always, when I do these advertisements on the podcast, I always talk about, the Facebook group and the instructor training and all those great things about the Flow System. But one thing that I should talk about more is the unique forms that are built in the Flow System. A lot of curriculums that you may purchase have these cookie cutter forms. Turn to the left, do a strike. Turn to the right, do a strike. Go forward, do a strike. Then do 3 front kicks with a bow in your hand, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? However, in the Flow System, you're learning dynamic forms that are designed to go directly into competition. So when I say a dynamic form, you're doing a strike set in one direction, changing direction quickly. You're doing bow staff trick combos with the bows. With the commas, you are implementing kicking because kicking is essential to great comma forms. And so you're doing things that would make these forms something that you can actually put your own creative twist on and compete with, instead of just being kind of the same old, go to the left, go to the right, go straight forward. So that's one unique feature of the Flow System that I wanted to make sure I pointed out to you guys, is the fact that you're not just getting content, you're not just getting techniques, you're not just getting instructor training, which are all great things, but you're also getting forms that are truly ready to be competition level forms. So head on over to theflowsystem.tv for more information today. And now we are going to be moving on into our final segment, which is going to be a new segment. At the end of the last episode, I talked about some potential ideas for a new segment, and one that I got a lot of positive feedback on was the fun fact segment, which I have decided to name Knowledge is Power. Subject to change. I like knowledge is power. I feel like that sounds impactful. I feel like that's got a good ring to it. Knowledge is power. But anyway, a little bit cliche, but that's all right. And so what this segment is for is it's basically to give us a little bit of an opportunity to not talk about karate for a second and just be able to talk about something in this world that I find to be cool, something that I've either learned in my time here at Stanford or in my own independent studies. If you know me well, you know that I'm a complete nerd and I love talking about academics and scholastic things and being able to share knowledge. And so here we go. So as many of you know, I have dreams of becoming a neurosurgeon. I want to go to medical school, study neurology, inspired by, my grandparents. Both of my grandfathers have struggled with neurodegenerative disease, strokes, things of that nature. Watching Kevin Thompson in his battle with ALS, which is a neurodegenerative disease, have a lot of inspirations for wanting to do it. So I study a lot of neurology. It's part of my concentration here in my major at Stanford. And what if I told you that telepathy is actually real? Somewhat. So let me explain this. So your brain has a specific part called the corpus callosum. And the corpus callosum is a small, very dense layer of neurons. It's its own kind of little part of the brain, and it's a very dense segment of neurons that sits right in the middle of your brain, in between the left and the right hemisphere. And what the corpus callosum does is it allows these two hemispheres to communicate, because your brain is split in half right down the middle. So you have a left side and a right side of your brain. They're split in half. What is keeping them together, what is allowing them to communicate, is this part of the brain called the corpus callosum. Now, that is not the fun fact. The fun fact is that the corpus callosum isn't actually a necessary brain feature, right? So there's two circumstances in which someone may not have a corpus callosum. There is actually a neurosurgical operation in which the corpus callosum can be removed. It's called a callosumectomy. So a neurosurgeon can actually go in and remove this part of your brain, and you would think that this would cause issues because the left and right side of the brain would no longer be able to communicate. Now, why would somebody do this surgery? Why would somebody have their corpus callosum removed? The reason for that is in a lot of seizure conditions like epilepsy, what's happening is the two halves of the brain aren't communicating with each other properly. So there winds up being an overfiring of these signals, and that leads to seizures. And so one potential way to cure seizures, and a couple of different forms, is to actually perform a callosumectomy so that the two hemispheres can't communicate as effectively. But they can still communicate, which is essential. It turns out that the electrical impulses that are passed between the synapses can actually jump from one hemisphere of the brain to the other hemisphere of the brain and allow your two hemispheres to actually continue to communicate. So clearly this is not telepathy with another person, but this is one part of a brain having communication with another part of the brain that it is not anatomically attached to, and that is really cool. And the way that people figured out that you could actually do this procedure and it would work is that there's actually some people that are born without a corpus callosum. Now, there's often some type of other defect. They often suffer from something called split brain syndrome, which can have implications with multiple personalities disorder, things like that, which can get pretty scary. But it is possible that someone is born and is fully functioning without having their corpus callosum. And so neurosurgeons theorize that, if the corpus callosum is the part of the brain that's responsible for someone's chronic seizures or maybe some other type of condition, then maybe removing that part of the brain can help them. And it actually isn't that radical of an idea. It's not that radical of an idea because, just in the past 20 years, Dr. Ben Carson, who is now working for our government, you can say what you want about his political standings. We won't get political on this podcast. However, Dr. Ben Carson was an extremely successful neurosurgeon at Johns Hopkins. And one of the operations that he helped bring back to the forefront of medicine that had largely been abandoned was the hemispherectomy. So there's actually a procedure in which neurosurgeons can take out an entire hemisphere of the brain to help prevent seizures. In the movie Gifted Hands, Dr. Ben Carson does this to a patient that was basically constantly in a state of seizure. She was a little girl, maybe 6 to 8 years old. It's a true story. And he performed a hemispherectomy to save her life and significantly increase her quality of life. And so that's an extremely radical idea, to take out half the brain, and the idea that somebody can still survive with only half a brain is insane, honestly. And the cool thing about this is that, because of those radical operations like a hemispherectomy, a corpus callosumectomy isn't that crazy of an idea. You're taking out the part of the brain that allows the two sides to communicate, and miraculously, the two hemispheres of the brain can continue to communicate despite the fact that they are not connected by an actual body part. And to me, that's really cool. And that's why I say it's like borderline telepathy, because it is one mass of neurons communicating with another mass of neurons, and there's nothing connecting the two of them. They can just exchange this information to be able to keep your body going. And that's insane to me, and it's part of what gets me so excited about medicine. It's part of what fascinates me. Another part of this, I remember I was talking to who was I talking to this with? I think I was watching Runoffs, and I was sitting next to Paul Richmond, who's Gavin Richmond's dad. I was sitting next to Winston Jones, who's the older brother of Ben Jones, who I already mentioned in the podcast. Winston's another student of mine, also competes in the adult division. I was talking to them, and we got off on this tangent, talking about how, when you think about it, other than your neurons, every single cell in your body is different than the cells that you were born with. And then Mr. Richmond brought up a good point. We're pretty sure that the turnover rate is like 7 years. So forget the cells that you were born with. Every 7 or 8 years, there's a complete turnover. All of the trillions of cells that make up your body, there's complete turnover. all those cells die off and there's new body cells, but the one cell type that remains is your neurons. Your neurons are forever. Now, sure, there's neural pruning, your synaptic structure can change. Maybe I'll talk about that in a future Knowledge is Power segment and how all of that works. But your neurons are with you forever. And that's part of what makes neurons so fascinating. That's part of what makes neurodegenerative disease very painful and very difficult to deal with, but also so fascinating to study and attempt to treat, is how weird and special and resilient and how smart really neurons are. Whereas literally every other cell type in your body, those cells die and other cells regenerate and go through mitosis and all that and create new cells and divide, and you grow, and all those cells die and turn over, but the neurons stay. And I know that I'm getting excited, and I could talk about this for hours. But the base of your Knowledge is Power segment for today is that there is some form of internal telepathy that can occur, because there is a part of your brain called the corpus callosum that allows the two hemispheres of your brain to communicate. And whether you have it removed surgically or whether you're born without one, the two halves of your brain can actually communicate without that body part. And I think that's really cool. I hope you think that's really cool too. If you thought that was cool, drop some comments down below. Let me know that you like Knowledge is Power. If you have a better name idea than Knowledge is Power, let me know. As always, I'm always looking for more discussion topics. So if you guys have questions, want me to delve into something a little bit deeper, please feel free to go ahead and drop that in the comments as well. If you enjoy the podcast, share it up. Thank you all so much for your support. Thank you for tuning in. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you enough for giving me this platform and allowing me to share my knowledge and share my passions with you guys. And thank you so much. I'll see you next time on the Jackson Rudolph Podcast.